James, and I'd like to welcome you to the Oracle Outlook for the week starting May the 14th, 2018. This week, I'm going to work with the deck that I thought I was going to work with last week. If you watched last week's reading, then you'll remember that I talked about this idea of wanting to work with decks that I hadn't touched or handled or hadn't appeared in this space in a while. And just as I had reached a decision at the very last moment, literally while I was setting up the room, another deck that I don't think I had ever used in an Oracle Outlook video reading before just popped into my mind. So that is the deck that I worked with last week, which was the Gilded Reverie Lenormand. This week, I'm going to be working with the Gypsy Witch Fortune-Telling Playing Cards because that's the deck that I was going to work with last week. So I figured, why not give it another go this week? So that's the deck that's going to be assisting me for this week's reading. And while I'm talking about that, over the course of the next few weeks, that's going to be the theme for deck selection for these Oracle Outlook video readings. So I'm going to be working with decks I hadn't used in a while, maybe even some systems I haven't used in a while. I'm right off the top of my head, I hadn't done any Kipper readings for a while or any Tarot readings for a while. So they may be showing up in the next few weeks. So keep your eyes out for that if you find Tarot or Kipper interesting. So again, we're going to be working with the Gypsy Witch Fortune-Telling Playing Cards. And so now let's get into this week's reading. And now taking the deck in hand, I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the cards. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on my usual intention and question for these weekly general readings. And that is, what do we need to know for the week ahead? I'm feeling one more time will be good. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. And fan them out. And now I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. And those will make up the cards for the reading. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I've selected all the cards, and so I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up and put that to one side. And now I'm going to take a look at the line, because I have the cards face down in front of me. And I'm going to start with the center card. For me, the center card always represents the central issue or something that we're being asked to focus on for the week ahead. And taking a look at this card, we have the eye. So for me, this is a card that can represent things having to do with vision. So we could be focusing on what do we envision for our lives this week. We may be at a place where we're needing to take a good look at where we are and where we want to go in the future. So there's something about that. It could also be this idea of like needing to keep an eye out for something. So it's like, what do you need to keep your eye on? So there is that to consider as well, because this card for me, going with the eye as a symbol, can represent sight, it could represent perception, but it can also represent observation. What do we need to be observing, right? And so maybe, you know, our role this week may be taking a step back and just be the observer, right? And I'm seeing my minister at church, and so when he talks about this idea about observation, he also adds this characteristic to it. How can you be the non-judgmental observer? So when you're observing things in your life, that could be people, situations, circumstances, conditions, how can you observe it in a non-judgmental way, right? It's making me feel like sometimes in life we have 2 roles we can play. Sometimes we are the spectator, and I'm going with that, and then other times we are the participant. And so maybe this is about taking a step back and becoming more of a spectator this week, you know, and really take a good look about your life, you know, the people in it, situations, circumstances that you are involved in, and how can you take a good look at that, and maybe once you observe it, you can see how you want to change things, if that is applicable, if that is a thing that needs to happen, right? But first, for me, this card is about really about envisioning things. What's the vision for your life, and how can you have a better idea of what that might look like, and then move forward to achieving that. So that's the first thing that I want to say with the I card. Now, if we go with a spiritual mindset or put a spiritual application to this, this card for me can also represent this idea of like second sight. And so that would be the idea of, like, you know, clairvoyance, people who see things in their mind's eye, you know, picturing things, images, that kind of thing. So it's about, like, maybe somebody is wanting to work with that sense, that ability. You know, you're wanting to work with your second sight, you're wanting to work with, you know, your gift or your ability of clairvoyance, you know, that kind of thing. But for me, the eye represents vision, envisioning things, keeping an eye on things, you know, so that could be monitoring something, that could be observing something, those kinds of things, you know. And it could also be too, like, dealing with experiences. We could just need to just employ how we're seeing things, you know, sight, perception meaning understanding, but it's all about taking a good look at something. And it also too, since I'm seeing a single eye on this card, also about focus, you know, maybe needing to, you know, focus or refocus. And then the last thing, because I'm noting that the playing card insert is the Four of Spades, sometimes the Four of Spades for me is known as the sick bed card. And so this could be some sense of illness. And so somebody may be needing to take a good look, pun not intended, with their eyesight, or something having to do with their eyes, because there may be a condition that's connected to that, if I connect the Four of Spades to that. If I connect the Four of Spades to another aspect of the card with this idea about confinement and feeling like you're stuck or you're limited and restricted, that may be where the vision and envisioning, or the focus and the refocusing in terms of moving your life forward, may come into play. So that's how I would look at the eye. And so now the surrounding cards could give us more insight into this card. So let's start with the card on the far left, opening the line up, and here we have the dog card. Okay, so dog for me can represent a friend, a partner, or companion, or an issue involving friendship, partnership, or companionship with that. And another underlying current or undercurrent with that could be something having to do with loyalty, because the dog for me can represent loyalty and trust. And so maybe that's where we're needing to keep an eye on, or we're putting some focus on, or we're envisioning for the future, would be something having to do with friendship or a particular friend, partnership or a particular partner, or companionship and a particular companion. So it could be any of those things, right? So I'm seeing that. So maybe somebody's keeping an eye on that or envisioning that for their future. But with that, it's about, like, if you're having an issue with a friend, be willing to look at the situation as it is, right? I'm playing back with the eye. You know, look at the situation as it is, you know. And also, too, if you're doing the envisioning, what would you like that to look like in the future? If it could be the most ideal friendship, partnership, companionship, whatever it is, what would be the ideal? And then what you're doing is you're creating a vision. And then once you have the vision, the picture, see where you are in the moment, and how can you start taking action steps to move towards that picture or that vision you have for the future, right? So there is that to consider. But for me, the first thing could be with the dog card, something having to do with a friend, a partner, or companion. Now, if it's not that, it could be a matter of getting help or support or even some kind of advice to help you move forward, because those are other aspects of the dog for me. So that's how I would look at the dog. So now it's very interesting because the dog is facing the card that's in between dog and eye. So let's take a look at that. Ah, okay. And here we have hand in hand. So again, hand in hand is a card just following the dog card. It's another card that can represent some kind of commitment or agreement between two people. That's what I see. The first thing I usually think of with the hand in hand card is this idea about shaking on it. Like, so, you know, let's shake on it. So it could just be a matter of some kind of agreement or commitment between two people. And so that may be something that we're focusing on or needing to keep an eye on, about this idea about honoring your commitment or honoring your agreement. That's how I would look at hand in hand. Another thing it would be For some people, it could just be a matter of, you know, this idea about relationship, partnership, companionship being emphasized again, especially with the dog card facing this particular card. So it could be help with a relationship, help with a partnership, help with a companionship, help with some kind of agreement. Could be a matter of, if we go with the idea that dog can represent help or support or advice, could be about gaining some help about that, gaining some support with that, or gaining some advice about that, right? So that's how I would look at hand in hand. And so now let's look at the card on the other side of I. And here we have, I had a feeling this card was going to show up. So here we have broken mirror or broken glass. So the first thing I usually think of with this card, it can, for me, I hear an old song called Shattered Dreams. It's by a group called Johnny Hates Jazz. So every time I pick up this card, I always hear that song play in my mind. And so Shattered Dreams just represents this idea of, you know, wanting something, and then for some reason there was some sort of condition, circumstance, something came up, and now as a result of that, it's been shattered, right? And so it could be very interesting that there may be a partner, a companion, a friend who has played a role in producing this idea of something being shattered, right? And so that could be the reason for the vision, for the needing to focus or refocus, the needing to take a good look, maybe the need to step back and non-judgmentally observe what has happened, you know, looking at it in a way that you don't fault the other person involved and you don't fault yourself. You just take a look at it and saying, is there something that could have been done differently? Is there something that could have been done better? You know, and it would be in a way where you learn the lesson of the experience, and you also set the stage for, if you find yourself in that position again, you won't let history repeat itself, right? So there is that to consider. But this card can just be a matter of this idea of, like, you know, working through a process in which something that you were hoping or wishing for, or something that you had a dream about achieving, didn't come to pass. And you're in the process of, you know, metaphorically, not literally, but metaphorically picking up the pieces. The other thing that I get with the sense of the broken glass or the broken mirror is that the mirror symbolizes this idea of self-reflection, you know, taking a look at yourself. If I go with the idea about the eye coming before this card, could be a matter of taking a look at yourself, you know, and maybe this is a time of self-reflection. You know, and if that's the case, what do you see? Usually for me, the mirror can represent this idea of taking a look at our image, taking a look at our identity, taking a look at the way we view ourselves, maybe in relation or comparison or contrast to the way that other people are seeing us. And with that, the way people see us is the way they tend to experience us, right? So there is that to consider. And I'm thinking, with the idea that the glass is shattered, is that somebody is doing something regarding their self-image, their identity, the way that they see themselves. There's something about that that is changing. It could be as a result of that change in identity or change in image that you are keeping in mind how other people are going to be experiencing you. And here's what I know to be true. When we work on changing ourselves, the way we see ourselves, and the way that we project ourselves out into the world, sometimes we come up against some pushback. And so maybe it's a matter of you just learning to deal with the idea that as you work on changing who you are, other people may not be on board totally. And if they're not, that is not a reflection of you. That is a reflection of them, and you need to see that. Especially in our friendships, our partnerships, and our companionships, because those people are closest to us. And so if you are working on changing yourself in any way, you're working on your image, your sense of self, your identity, and you're feeling like you're getting a little bit of pushback and resistance to that, take a step back and remember that it's not about you, it's about the other person and their choice of reaction and response. So that is how I'm seeing the broken glass or broken mirror card. And then the last card. is okay. So here we have the gentleman card. And so if I remember correctly, I do believe that the gentleman card was in our reading last week, right? And if that's the case, we're having this situation again where there may be some emphasis on a man. So a man, because this is a significator card, a man may be playing an important role or part in this experience. And if I go with, I'm using the mirror analogy, if I mirror the cards on the opposite ends of the spectrum, here we have dog card, man card. So this could be about a friendship, a partnership, companionship with a man, right? Because dog and man are mirroring cards, right? It could also be, too, that there may be an issue regarding the man's loyalty, his faithfulness, because dog can also represent being loyal and being faithful, and also, too, a matter of trust. So could it be, possibly, if we go with the broken glass or broken mirror, was somebody, in terms of loyalty and trust, maybe loyalty or trust that was placed in a man, was that shattered? And if that's the case, what do you need to see that maybe you didn't see either before, or what do you need to see as a result of that experience now, going forward? So that's how I would look at that. But as the last card, for me, this could be that it points to a man in particular, or that there could be a man who's going to play an active part in resolving the situation. And this is important because the Two of Hearts as the inset can represent partnership, can represent relationship, and can also represent this idea about sharing feelings, right? So it could just be a matter of, in a relationship with a man in particular, it's important to share how you feel. And so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end this week's Oracle Outlook. And as I close, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge my subscribers. This week, the channel hit 902 subscribers. So I'd like to thank those of you who have recently subscribed to the channel. And while I'm thanking you, I'd also like to acknowledge you and say welcome to the channel. So thank you for those of you who have recently subscribed. But I also like to acknowledge those of you who have subscribed over time and have been long-term or long-time subscribers. So thank you very much. I'm very pleased with that recent achievement. So thank you one and all for subscribing to the channel. But whether you are a subscriber or a regular viewer, I like to thank you because, as I always say, I can't do what I do here without any of you there. So thank you for your continued support and encouragement of the work and the content that goes into the channel. So I'm Jameson Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.